I want Kim to hang tight on the line because I know she has a comment she wants to make, but I would kick myself if I did not get an opportunity having both Dr. Kevorkian, author of Color Monitors, and Mr. Paterson from MinorityReporter.com and author of You Mean There's Race in My Movie, if I did not get Collateral in. I will definitely. I'm going to go to Dr. Kevorkian first because I have checked out Mr. Patterson's work, and I know they have incredible information just on the marketing alone of how that movie was marketed. But yeah, I definitely want to get input on that because we have, all stars in this film. You got Tom Cruise, Jada Pinkett Smith, Jamie Foxx. Dr. Kevorkian, your thoughts with Collateral?
Well, this is a good point for me because I think this is, for me, would be a version of the kind of the challenge or the good question Mr. Patterson just put out there for Kim. Is there a movie that you liked, or the movie at face value, didn't strike you, as being racist, that if that you might have a blind spot for, and I think that in comparison to a lot of the movies that we've been thinking about, and not even having seen it, but just having read the You Mean the Race is My Movie, and having read Mr. Patterson, Mr. Goodney's analysis of Man on Fire, it struck me that there are a lot of things to like in Collateral in comparison to movies like Man on Fire, where Man on Fire you see Denzel Washington is sticking his neck out to save the little white girl, right? And that's why he's putting his life on the line. And actually, I just found out, I hadn't seen the movie, but that he loses his life in the end. I'm sorry?
I said sorry about that.
No. That's quite all right. But and that's also something you've seen earlier. I don't know if you've seen Virtuosity with Denzel Washington.
Yeah, I did see that, yeah.
Yeah, but similarly, he's sticking his neck out to save the little white girl at the end, right? So that's sort of his angelic function, and he has to plug in his bionic arm to do it in some way. But so that's why it was
a robot.
Yeah, that's right. So, but the point is, in Collateral, you have Max Droscher, the Jamie Foxx character, who, early on in the movie is, established as the hero, as the central character. He is given a romantic connection with Jada Pinkett Smith. And I don't know, I actually think that's just a beautiful sequence at the beginning of the movie. Maybe I'm, sentimentally I went soft, but the connection that he makes with Jada Pinkett Smith's lawyer character in that cab ride, I thought that was a very convincing version of what Hollywood, tries to do in these movies, which is over a relatively short period of time make you believe that a strong connection has been made between two characters such that you can have a plausible romance over the span of a 2-hour movie. So, he's got a real connection to her, and in the end, she's the one that he is sticking his neck out to save. She's the one that he is taking dramatic action, and he has an interest in that. He's not saving Jada Pinkett Smith for someone else. It's because, he thinks this is, could be a love interest. And not only that, but furthermore, he doesn't self-sacrifice himself in order to do this. You see the self-sacrificial black character so many times. I'm thinking, I Am Legend, takes that to the nth degree, where the noble, heroic black man sacrifices himself to save everyone else or save the world. Here, Max is taking decisive action from the middle point of the movie onward to save himself. And he does save himself, and he makes it, and he is victorious at the end, and he gets the girl. So if you look at the main, hero arc of the movie, I think there's a lot to like. Now, I don't want to steal Mr. Patterson's thunder. What I also like is that in sort of on a book level analysis, you can start to look at a movie like this and start to look at sort of the peripheral characters or the minor characters. That's what I always, think is often the blind spots of movies. And you talk about, for example, the treatment of the detective that is also going after the Tom Cruise character and the way he is ultimately expendable, portrayed as a Hispanic character. So there's a way in which there's still a willingness to sacrifice the minority character in that arc. But I'll just put it out there. I liked Collateral as a movie, but I can also see even just renting the DVD I think that there's a huge buzz for the movie about Jamie Foxx's performance. Actually, how I came to see the movie was people talking about you got to see Jamie Foxx in this movie. It wasn't about you got to see Tom Cruise in this movie, and I think his career got a huge boost from it. But still, even in the DVD, it's a 2-disc set, right? Disc 1 is Tom Cruise's face. Disc 2, the additional features is Jamie Foxx's face. So, right.
Well, it's. I think it's a great time just to state for anybody again that's not familiar with the Minority Reporter that we in fact when we're watching movies, I mean we do love movies. Despite the fact that we analyze race in mainstream movies, and again race, as we argue, is in many respects just another element of the Hollywood movie making industry. I mean. You could look at that sadly, or look at it in a positive way for some people. But I think really, in many respects, race is much like lighting or cinematography, or set design, in terms of it being a consciously creative decision to use a character that is not white. And history has shown. Just in looking across movies and over time, that the choice of a non-white character is a decision. Again, if you look in our book and look at the story behind Max Keeble's Big Move, which had a black writer, again, who pitched the story as, again, it was just an everyday story. He just happened to be black, but that being the first change the studio made was to change that character from white to black. Why? Well, for any number of reasons, but primarily because they knew that having that character as a white character would increase the audience. Now, in a case, and again, that being a situation where, hey, who's to say there really is no evidence to the contrary, right? I mean, basically they're able to say, well, we know having a white character will have a wider audience, as opposed to what other movies featuring young minority youth in everyday ordinary stories. I don't know, I haven't seen those movies, so I guess in a way they could say they're right, because we don't really have any other evidence to suggest otherwise. In the case of a movie like Collateral, again, the question, is there race in my movie? Well, the answer is yes in this case. If you look at the context of the story, the doctor referenced, I believe LeVar referenced as well, that in our book we talk about how there was different marketing for this movie in urban areas as opposed to areas that had larger presumably had larger percentage of white people, i.e. in those areas where there are a larger portion of white people, that they actually marketed Tom Cruise's face. And Tom Cruise, by his contract, anybody who hasn't seen it can go back and look at his movies and actually sees that, again, this is in his contract. This is not just, it just happens to be the case, but that his face will always be large on the cover of any piece of Collateral unless he says otherwise, which, again, speaks to his power. And in the case of Collateral, he actually waived that, if you want to call it right, he waived his right to have his image as the primary image in marketing materials. Why? Because he figured, well, Jamie Foxx may actually play a little bit better in South Central than I would. And again, who's to say that he's wrong? Again, I'm basically just going off of what somebody else decided to do, right, in terms of making a decision that they thought was based on race and appeal. If you look at the actual movie itself, this, I don't want to say this goes to blackface, but ironically it's actually along the lines of what we just talked about in terms of flash forward. If you look at the subtext of the movie, anybody remembers the scene where Tom Cruise actually takes Jamie Foxx to Ladera Heights, but was a hotbed of, up-and-coming African-American activity, right? I mean, it was a fairly middle-class area, with fairly well-to-do African-American population. that would be doing what? Consuming things like jazz and going to clubs and otherwise being socially progressive, and in comparison to the default, regressive image of black people in movies. And there's a pivotal scene, and if you look at the story development, there's a pivotal change for Jamie Foxx, wherein Tom Cruise is basically saying to him, you know what, I'm blacker than you are. I'm taking you to Ladera Heights. I'm telling you about jazz music that you didn't even know existed in your own backyard. These are basically your people, and you don't get it. I'm the cool white guy who basically is black, even though my hair is white. I'm able to navigate this world, and here I am. I'm handling business. I'm handling, the underworld, which, in a way, right? That's how they're flipping it. In a way, typically it should be the black guy that knows that world, right? It should be the black guy that's taking him to Ladera Heights, saying, "Here's how you do it. Here's how you're cool. Here's how you're going to make a deal." And the pivotal moment, it's very important to note. One of my other personal items is to note, in terms of emasculation or black male representation, is to note when black males particularly have glasses on.
Mm-hmm.
Look across all types of advertising, movies, media. Take note when black males have glasses on. Why? Well, glasses reduce the threat, right? I mean, anybody that wears glasses, unless you're shades, I'm talking about, the bifocals, right? You have glasses on, that reduces your threat level if you're a black male. I mean, in terms of the traditional image, right? I mean, you're not going to see Snoop in a music video with the half rims or the bifocals. If they're half rims, they're on a vehicle. But what is the point in time when Jamie Foxx makes his transition? What does he do? He takes off the glasses, right?
Absolutely.
Suddenly, he becomes the black guy that's going to take charge and is going to make decisions, right? So in terms of the overall storyline, I would say that, again, you're right. This movie, in many respects, has features that are a lot different than what we normally see for black characters. And not surprisingly, as a result of it, we see that basically Hollywood took a non-traditional approach, right? They asked Tom Cruise to do things differently. And if you look at it, again, I don't want to say that this was all in Tom Cruise's plate, but think about how in the end he still comes out on top, right? In terms of, well, you know what? I'm the one taking the risk here, right? I'm the one that basically is going to be in a movie where I actually die, and it turns out I'm not going to be the hero in the end, which is what I've always done. So I'm going to be very guarded about the marketing. I'm going to, at my discretion, allow them to not show my image in certain areas. So, again, we look at this dynamic, not taking anything away from the movie, but we see how, when all is said and done, Tom Cruise being very careful about how his image is used and portrayed, which I think is in stark contrast to how much control minority characters and minority actors have over their images in mainstream movies.
I agree wholeheartedly. I did want to point out, my view, Collateral, incredible illustration of how the system of white supremacy works. I pretty much think the film is like a violent, refined version of Driving Miss Daisy. I could be incorrect, but that's my view, and I think I could substantiate it with what's in the film.
I'd have to go another hour to get that take.
But no,
I know.
I can see where you're coming from with that. I mean, there's a lot of ugly stuff about Tom Cruise just telling Jamie Foxx what to do. When is this negotiation? He's just giving him orders all the time, right? I guess the question is how, it's going to vary maybe with the audience, but how do you feel when that is happening? In other words, in Driving Miss Daisy, that's played for sentimental connection, and it's not questioned. But here, my feeling, seeing the film is, I'm with Jamie Foxx every step of the way, and I'm looking for the ways that he is resisting and refusing to buy Tom Cruise's line that you don't have a choice. Content yourself that you never had a choice. And yet, every turn that Jamie Foxx has an opportunity to countermand the will of Tom Cruise, he takes that opportunity and runs with it, and he ultimately gets out from under that. And I think that it's not the same racial dynamic, but there are other movies and other forms of cultural entertainment where the basis of the movie is that the hero character is held in the thrall of the villain, and the villain is trying to make the hero into a pawn. I'm thinking of like 24, where Jack Bauer is being set up to, he's got to do everything that the bad guys tell him to do. I don't know if you saw Nick of Time with Johnny Depp, but it's a version of the Collateral thing. It's the tagline for the movie is 90 minutes, 6 bullets, no choice. Christopher Walken is pulling the strings, and he's going to make Johnny Depp into a killer, and Johnny Depp is powerless. He supposedly has no choice. But this is a movie where there's a additional potential ugliness in that it's the white character Tom Cruise telling Jamie Foxx what to do. But what I find to celebrate is the way that this movie has Jamie Foxx resist that and triumph over it. I would like to say that's why I was able to enjoy it. On the other hand, it may just be my blind spot. So,
and I don't think it's necessarily a matter of. And I guess I would say that I don't know if it's always a matter of having to enjoy it or reject it. And I think that's one of the things that when I think about younger audiences, one of the reasons why younger people are often so concerned about talking about race, as I see it, is that they're fearful of finding themselves in that dynamic, right? In other words, do I accept it or do I reject it completely? And the default is that I actually want to be accepted, right? I mean, that's the base of social interaction, is that you want to agree and be respectful. I mean, in most civil interactions. So it's not unlike watching this movie, wherein you may be able to enjoy the movie, right, and enjoy the dynamic, yet when all is said and done, the dynamics still speak to much of the same hierarchy. In that Tom Cruise, let's say, unlike perhaps a 24, where in watching 24, we get the feeling that Jack Bauer is always in control of the situation, even if somebody is trying to control him. We get the feeling that he's dictating circumstances, he's telling other people what to do, and that ultimately this is a temporary shift in the balance of power, but that he will restore his power. And we talk about that in terms of the context of white characters. We talk about that in terms of being the manipulator. Now, if we let's look at like characters like, again, Will Smith or Denzel, right? It's not to say that Denzel Washington or Will Smith don't end up saving the day when all is said and done, right? But if you look at their movies, can we really think definitively, I'm talking about definitively, where they're in a position where they're taking control like a James Bond.
Yeah.
Right. James Bond is. I'll give you James Bond and Jack Bauer as quintessential white male leads. Where I don't have to crack a smile if I don't want to. Right. If I don't feel like it, I could have romance and not crack a smile. Or I could watch a funny movie and I won't crack a smile unless I say so. Right. I'm making decisions. I'm telling you what to do. I want my eggs over easy. I want my drink shaken, not stirred. And I'm controlling the action from start to finish. There's no question. And more importantly, I'm surrounded by the trappings of these other important details, right? When LeVar mentioned the driving of his Daisy, well, again, what position is he in? By default, he's already put into a servile position, being a cab driver. Oh, not a small detail there, right? I mean, he's not coming in saying, hey, you know what? I'm the detective here. And even more importantly, right, we have an apples-to-apples comparison here. When we have a minority character who seemingly is a detective, the Hispanic male, when he seems to want to take control, what happens? Oops, sorry about that. Turns out you don't have control, and you're killed off. And one thing that I think is important, and the caller, Kim, I believe, wasn't necessarily alluding to this, but I think what we oftentimes do in terms of Minority Reporter is we actually ask people to take the opposite approach. Is instead of looking at the minority character and what's happening to them, that actually is not really telling you the whole story. What you really need to do is look at the white characters and what they're doing. Because the bottom line is that Hollywood is not making movies to make movies about minority characters. They're making them to make movies about white characters. I mean, on average, across the board. And they're made, again, on average, by white people. So if I'm going to understand what's going on, minority characters, again, are basically an insert. I mean, that's an afterthought. That's like a, hey, I may include you, but I don't have to. I mean, I'm under no obligation, right? I mean, it's kind of like that mail order. You know, I'm under no obligation to accept this, you know, after that 30-day trial period. I can send you back, right? So if I'm looking at what I really need to understand is not necessarily about the racist content, but really more so how these movies are appealing to white people, right? In terms of what are the things that I need to show or include that are going to make the white people going to these movies feel good and feel like they want to see more movies. And again, perhaps, and this is not an indictment, Doctor, but perhaps what you're seeing is perhaps a manifestation of this, right?
Yeah,
in other words,
absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, there is some stuff that I question, but overall, this seems to be a pretty decent representation. And perhaps, again, think about you and on your daily basis, right? I mean, it's not as if you have to come out when you're at a grocery store if you see something that you feel is racially questionable. I mean, do you have to, you know, interject? I mean, you could be like, I think that's wrong, but I'm not going to say anything. I mean, I really just want the milk, and I just want to move on about my business. So perhaps Hollywood understands that there are people like you that are in the theaters saying, you know what, even though I never said it, this is definitely different than those other movies that I know that have content that is clearly offensive, right? That otherwise I wouldn't say to anybody, but I know in my heart of hearts that imagery is offensive. And as long as nobody brings it to my attention, I'm just going to kind of move on until somebody tells me I have to do different, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of what we see in mainstream movies now.
Yeah. Yeah. I just want to say about producers. I think one of the it occurs to me. I think one of the producers of Collateral was actually one of the producers of Driving Miss Daisy. Just to, it definitely is. Didn't Frank Darabont have something to do with that, or am I just? I know he wrote the Shawshank Redemption and that kind of thing.
Wow.
I don't know.
I think the doctor again just dropped the mallet there. You know, I have to look that up myself. But
yeah, I'm going to take a bow. I'm going to take a bow. I'm going to take a bow. Gus T Renegade, I believe I did say that, and I have no idea if that's true, but I believe I did say I think Collateral is a refined, violent Driving Miss Daisy, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, and at first I thought you were, but no. But now I'm thinking again. All right.